All of Apple's October products have been launched. We've covered the iPads in the past few videos. So now the question is, what's going to happen in November, as we didn't have any Macs in October like we initially expected. So here's everything to expect from Apple in November. So Tim Cook has already started teasing us on the next generation of Macs. So he posted this on Twitter saying, our engineering teams in Austin are hard at work on powerful next generation silicon chips. Great to see them in action. And we can see a photo of Tim looking over a bunch of development boards, and we can also see a bunch of older Macs being tested. There's a Mac Mini, the Intel model. There's also the Mac Pro, the trash can, interesting enough. And there's also an iMac Pro behind all of them. Not only that, but Mark Gurman said in his latest Para newsletter that the Mac development is still undergoing and that some Macs will be launching in November. Now, it is still unclear if that means that we'll have a November Apple event or simply just press releases like Apple has done for October. But regardless, there are 5 products to expect in November, with the first one being the new MacBook Pros. These would simply be the same designs as we got in 2021, but with updated M2 Pro and M2 Max chips. According to Mark's latest report, the M2 Max would feature 12 CPU cores, that's up from 10, so up to a 20% bump in multi-core, with 8 high-performance cores and 4 efficiency cores instead of 8 high-performance and 2 efficiency cores like we had before. So this does mean that when you're using low power mode, you will get faster performance, but it could also mean more power consumption because of those 2 extra cores. And the GPU is expected to be bumped from the 32 core that we have now up to a 38 core GPU. So that means that we could see up to an 18% bump in graphics performance compared to the M1 Max model. So this is a good upgrade. I would say a great upgrade for new users. However, if you already have the M1 Max, then honestly you shouldn't upgrade, as the performance difference would be just way too small to justify that. But then we also have a second chip variant, which would be the M2 Pro. Now, even though we haven't had any specific leaks on this, if we apply the same logic as the M1 Pro was compared to the M1 Max, then the M2 Pro should have 12 CPU cores, so the same counts from the 10 that we had before, and also 18, 19, or 20 GPU cores from the 16 core that we have now. Again, good upgrade, but not worth it if you're upgrading from the 2021 MacBook Pros. Now, we could also see some other potential changes, such as a new color. I think midnight would be awesome, or maybe a gold, just to keep it fresh. I feel like the MacBook Pros do need a third color option. Now, I do believe that the battery life will actually take a hit with its new models, and that's because the M2 Pro and the M2 Max chips are still set to be based on the old 5nm process instead of the newer 3nm. Combine that with more CPU cores and more GPU cores, these chips would be more power hungry than the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. Now, what I would love to see, honestly, is just improved battery life. That's my #1 request from these new models. I'm currently still using the 14-inch with an M1 Max, 32-core GPU, 32 gigs of RAM, and the battery life, like I've said in plenty of previous videos, is just not that great. I'm getting between 4 to 5 hours of actual use, and then when I enable low power mode, I am getting more, about 6 to 7, but still, I do think that's quite poor for an Apple Silicon Mac, especially when you consider that I was easily getting 10 hours from my 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro, and that was without low power mode. Not only that, but my battery health has already dropped to 86%, and this is the one reported by Apple themselves. If I use a third-party app like Coconut Battery, it will actually show me 82.5%. That is almost a 20% drop in just a single year. So yeah, not the best experience when it comes to the battery life with the 2021 models, but fun fact, speaking of those 2021 models, Apple is now offering up to 25% off if you purchase a refurbished model. So that'll be a great way to save, especially when these new models come out. Or, of course, you could also go on Amazon, link in the description, as they do have some great deals on the current 2021 models. More about the November Apple releases right after this. This is Ugreen's new Nexode 140-watt GaN charger, a premium ultra-fast charger featuring world-leading GaN technology for better heat diffusion and a smaller footprint. It is 22% smaller than Apple's own 140-watt charger, whilst also featuring an extra 2 ports. With hyper-fast charging, the Power Delivery 3.1 protocol enables speeds of up to 140 watts. It will charge the 16-inch MacBook Pro from 0 to 56% in just 30 minutes. That's 1.6 times faster than a 65-watt charger, and it will even charge 2 laptops and your phone at the same time. Plus, the temperature is measured 800 times per second to intelligently adjust power output to protect your battery. It also includes a 240-watt braided nylon cable, which is 1.5 meters long for added convenience. Check it out by using the link below. And now, back to the video. Okay, now the second thing to expect from November would be a brand new Mac Mini. Now, the design of this new Mac Mini is expected to remain the same as the current model, and that's mostly because of server racks. Now, here we're expecting to see 2 configurations. So an M2 model with 8 CPU cores, 10 GPU cores, so that's 2 extra GPU cores compared to the M1 model. And then the second configuration would be the M2 Pro chip, which is expected to have 12 CPU cores and then 18, 19, or 20 GPU cores. So yeah, this would be the cheapest way for you to get a Pro chip from Apple, as before you had to buy the 14-inch MacBook Pro. I do believe that this new M2 Pro Mac Mini would be the star of the show. By the way, I also expect the Mac Studio to get updated to the M2 Max chip and the M2 Ultra, which I'm going to cover in just a second. Okay, at number 3, we have the new iMac. So the weird thing here is that the 24-inch iMac behind me, that's still using the M1 chip. So now that we have the M2, it would be a no-brainer for Apple to simply put an M2 inside of this. However, Mark Gurman is saying that, nope, we will get no M2 chip inside the iMac. Instead, Apple will be skipping straight to the M3 in 2023. Now, I do think that this is quite strange for the iMac to be the only new Mac that does not get updated to the M2 chip this year, probably due to the lower sales that the iMacs get compared to the more popular MacBooks. At number 4, we have the iMac Pro. So we do know that the iMac Pro is still in the works. The last time we heard about this was back in July from Mark Gurman, and he was saying that Apple will be including the M3 Pro and the M3 Max chips inside. This new iMac is expected to have the same design style as the M1 model, but with a larger display and mini LED technology on top of the new chips that I mentioned before. Of course, we could still see this in November as a surprise announcement. And then we have the Mac Pro. So here's the thing, when Apple introduced Apple Silicon, they promised us a 2-year transition, which would end in 2022. Every single Apple product had switched to Apple Silicon, the only exception being the Mac Pro and of course the higher end Mac Mini, but that will be replaced in November. Of course, the Mac Pro is the only full product that is still using Intel. And we do have some new details from Mark Gurman's Power On newsletter. And he said that this new Mac Pro would come with the M2 Ultra and the M2 Extreme chips, with the M2 Ultra being essentially 2 M2 Maxes, and the M2 Extreme essentially being 4 M2 Maxes. That means that the M2 Ultra is expected to have 24 CPU cores from 20, so that is 16 high performance and 4 efficiency, so that means up to a 20% higher performance in multi-core compared to the M1 Ultra. And then 76 GPU cores, up from 64, which is what we had before. So that is up to 18% higher GPU performance. And then we have the M2 Extreme, which is expected to have up to 48 CPU cores, up to 152 GPU cores, and up to 256 gigabytes of RAM. And according to Mark, the machine that Apple's actually testing right now has 24 CPU cores, 76 GPU cores, and 192 gigabytes of RAM, and it is already running on macOS Ventura. Although, according to Mark, the Mac Pro would not be going on sale until sometime in 2023. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if Apple teases this in any way in November, or maybe even fully release it in November. Also, we are expecting to see some price bumps for all the new Macs. Essentially, just like Apple did with the iPads, all the iPads are more expensive now outside the US. For example, the iPad Pro in the UK is £150 more than the old model. So I do expect all these new Macs to suffer from a price increase just like the iPads did. Personally, I'm really excited to see the Mac Pro. I would say the most. I'm curious to see what Apple does with the new design, if they do change it, and if they don't, how modular and how expandable will this Mac Pro be? Let me know, what do you guys think, and which new Mac are you excited for the most? I'm Daniel, this is ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.